For the last month and a half, life had been pretty much like a roller coaster ride for the disciples. Manic highs and gut-wrenching lows. There had been their entry into Jerusalem when it seemed as if everyone in the city had turned out to welcome their arrival. And with this much support from the public and Jesus' natural charisma, surely the time had arrived when God's kingdom would at last be ushered in and the Roman Empire overthrown. At long last, Israel would take its rightful place among the nations. Everyone had been waiting for so many generations, and finally the moment had arrived. But all these dreams of glory had been smashed into pieces and ground underfoot within less than a week as the disciples watched their teacher, their mentor, their master hanging upon the cross until he was dead. The cross, a well-known symbol of shame and instrument of torture reserved for threats to the empire. Jesus had dared to proclaim a new day of freedom and liberty to one and all, and now he paid the price for it, and the disciples' hopes were buried with him. Next came the strange and wonderful news that the tomb was empty, and that, in fact, he wasn't dead after all. And for over a month, one report after another surfaced of the appearance of Jesus. Jesus walking through solid walls like a ghost. Jesus enjoying some grilled fish on the beach like an everyday human being. Jesus sharing a meal with a couple friends in Emmaus, a village not far from Jerusalem. And he wasn't just making cameo appearances, but he seemed to have taken up where he had left off, once again teaching and preaching about the imminence of God's reign. So maybe they hadn't misunderstood everything after all. Maybe he had returned to lead his people to victory over the Romans. And that's where our text takes up, with them asking Jesus, "Lord, is this the time when you will restore the kingdom to Israel?" And his less than straightforward reply was, in essence, "Nope, you have some work to do." And then he was taken from them. In the end, some clouds literally blocked their ability to see him. And there they stood, looking up at nothing but a bunch of clouds where moments before they had been looking at Jesus. That's what clouds do best. I'm not talking about the thunderheads we all experienced earlier during the week, which opened up with the much-needed rain we've all been praying for. No, I'm talking about those big, puffy, cotton ball clouds that drift around in the sky with nothing more to do than to occasionally block the sun's light. I imagine those sorts of clouds to have blocked Jesus from their line of vision, in the same way that their preconceived ideas about who Jesus was and what he was about had blocked their understanding of his mission. Their fixation on the overthrow of the Roman Empire acted like clouds blocking their vision of Jesus and his message. A message which said, "You have work to do." A message which was underscored by the appearance of two men dressed in white who told them to stop standing around. "You heard him. Get your head out of the clouds. Get a move on." I think there are clouds in our own lives, both our individual lives and our communal lives, which block our vision of Jesus. Within my own life, nothing can make me lose sight of Jesus faster than a good old dose of resentment. If I imagine you to be imposing your agenda upon me, or if I think you have insulted or criticized me, If I sense that you have something I want, or you might take from me something that I already have, then resentment will quickly slip in. And any image of Jesus in my life will be completely hidden because of that cloud of resentment. Self-absorption is another cloud in my life. When I worry about what others are thinking about me, when I overly concern myself with my reputation and appearance, when I find myself ignoring the needs of others and justifying my actions with the overused phrase, "I need some me time," then I've generally lost sight of Jesus, and I'm deaf to anything the Spirit might say to me. Self-absorption has clouded over my image of Jesus. And fear. Fear and worry are clouds in my life that block my vision. When fear and worry creep in, they will utterly cut off any and all vision of Jesus Christ in my life. Worry about the low opinions of others. Fear for my safety. Fear of death, not so much my own as the death of my loved ones. Worry about financial insecurity. Fear of failure, and even fear of success. When the clouds of fear and worry rule my life, then I feel imprisoned by them. But when I'm able to bask in the sunlight of the love and forgiveness that Jesus modeled, then I feel liberated. But cloud blockages aren't confined to individual lives. They also occur within faith communities. Entire congregations lose sight of the mission of Jesus Christ because of the clouds that drift onto the scene. What about the cloud of we're not large enough? We're not large enough to make a difference. We're not large enough to have any impact. We're not large enough to have multiple programs going on around here. And let's not forget the we don't have enough money cloud that distracts us from accomplishing our mission. Our budget isn't large enough to accommodate so many love offerings. We can only afford low or no cost ministry programs and don't even think about expanding our ministries or staff. Unless people cough up more money, we'll soon be closing the doors of the church. Money, or the lack thereof, is an excellent distraction from doing ministry. When we focus too much on our limited finances, we miss out on the abundance that is ours for the taking. And so we can spend our days focused on these big, puffy cotton ball clouds constantly moving in and out of our vision, ever drawing our attention to their presence. Fear, resentment, and self-absorption, not enough people, not enough money. These distractions and more can cloud our vision and cause us to lose our focus. We can give ourselves over to them and suffer the spiritual paralysis that comes from staring at clouds. Or we can heed the voice of the Spirit, which tells us to get our heads out of the clouds because we've got work to do. There are lives in desperate need of transformation. The disciples were reminded about the people in Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria who hadn't heard the news about Jesus yet. And we are reminded of the people in our own town, people around the U.S., and even people beyond our nation's borders. We've got work to do, and there's simply no time to sit around and give in to our distractions. Clouds are inevitable. They will come and they will go. Sometimes the sky seems to be filled with them. The question is whether or not we will focus on them or rise above them. The ascension narrative is not so much about Jesus flying up to heaven as it is about Jesus rising above the clouds. And it wasn't a one-time event either. It happens over and over again. Every time we lift our eyes to the hills, as the psalmist said, we rise above the clouds that would limit our vision. Each time we let go of fear and resentment and choose instead love and forgiveness, we rise above the clouds. There's work to do, so let's focus on that. Let's focus on the problem of poverty in the backyard of our own city. Let's focus on the stigma of HIV that's still alive and well, thank you very much. Let's focus on LGBT, race, age, and accessibility justice issues. There's work to do, and God needs each of us to pitch in. There are lives to be transformed, wounds to be healed, and spirits waiting to be made whole again. And there's no time for sitting around and being distracted by clouds. So rise above them. Embrace the call of God in your life, and then ascend to the heights of heaven, empowered by the Spirit of holiness, a spirit which will never leave you or abandon you. You have God's promise on that. Amen.